Welcome back to another exciting episode of Brief Encounters. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Sakshi Srivastava, an accomplished legal professional with a wealth of experience in both litigation and academia. Sakshi ma'am has completed her LLM from Columbia Law School, where she was recognized as an Harlan Fiske Stone Scholar. Currently, she is deeply involved in litigation at the Supreme Court of India and the High Court of Rajasthan. Alongside her legal practice, Sakshi ma'am also serves as a faculty member at Jindal Global Law School, contributing to the academic development of law students. In this episode, we'll dive into her experiences at Columbia, her transition into high-stakes litigation, and her dual role as an educator and a litigator. Sakshi ma'am will also share invaluable insights and advice for aspiring lawyers looking to make their mark in the legal world. Let's give a warm welcome to Sakshi Srivastava. Good evening, ma'am. It's wonderful to have you here on Brief Encounters.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, this is a question that we ask all our guests. How did your stint with law start? Was it certain that you wanted to pursue law from the very beginning?
So I decided in grade 6th actually that I wanted to be a lawyer. I always, I was always infatuated by this idea of advising other people or helping people out. And I thought it'd be really cool to be a lawyer actually when I was a kid. I still remember, so India Today used to have these issues of college rankings. So every year they would come out with one. I would really wait for it, go to the law section and check out all the top colleges that I wanted to get in. So I had that in mind for a long time. Just the field that initially I thought I would be more into a corporate. I'll be more of a corporate lawyer, but I kind of changed that into more of a litigation practice later.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So it was very certain from the very beginning. It wasn't even 10th or 11th where most people realize. 6th is brilliant.
I think I was always a very curious kid and an argumentative kid also.
That's amazing.
Back.
That's very common, especially in a household. I totally understand.
It's very true in my case.
So you did your undergrad from NLU Jodhpur. After NLU Jodhpur, what motivated you to pursue and then that also abroad?
So I was litigating. So once I graduated in 2013, I started litigating, and then I joined the AG office in Rajasthan High Court, where I was practicing. Then when my brother lives in the US actually, so I was visiting him in New York. That is when he studied abroad. So I like the idea of having an international exposure in that field, and I observed closely, and I thought that's a good idea. For personal as well as professional growth, I thought LLM would help. And after it had been a few years in the litigation field, so it would have been a nice break. I applied, but then COVID came. But I wanted to be there. I wanted to have a personal experience, so I deferred it by 1 year. And then I went for an LLM.
All right. And now that you've had the academic perspective of both India and US, how would you compare the educational experience between them? What difference do you observe when it came to the teaching method, the curriculum, overall academic environment?
So I did my LLM at Columbia, New York, which so American education system is quite different from the Indian education system. It's law as well. The Indian legal system, the law schools we have, are sort of a mixture of how we are taught in the schools and more modeled after the British way of education. The American way of education is more of a Socratic method of teaching, right? So for instance, in India, in NLU study and other NLUs as well, we used to have regular classes, just the way we had in school, right? Different professors would come and teach and go, and we used to have all the subjects every day. For instance, that's something that you don't really find abroad. So, and then we didn't have electives, except we had the honor system in 4th and 5th year in NLU, where we could choose your specialized field. And apart from that, obviously, there's a dual degree, of course. So there are, you do BA subjects or BBA subjects, which are also important. So that's, and then we finished it in 5 years. American way of education is more because it's postgraduate degree there, and it's not a immediate graduate degree like in India. The one I did, of course. I can talk about the 5-year course. So there you're already expected to know a lot of things when you come to a law college, and it starts from a very high level, even at the JD level. And if you're doing a master's degree, of course, then you are definitely assumed to know a lot of things. The system, the way of it is like, you choose your electives. There are some seminar courses, there are clinics, there are experiential learning courses, which unfortunately in India, we don't have a lot of them, except maybe a few colleges. It's coming up now, but this whole concept that, there will only be 20 people in one class, which is a seminar course, or maybe having workshops, like, I took courses like, say, negotiation workshops. So that were really helpful, which, to teach you practical learning things. Another thing I found like helpful, which we don't have in India more, is like, for instance, the externship concepts. We did not have any, which were sending us to intern and then marking us or guiding us on that. Whatever we have extracurriculars in India, like I was the head of the Legal Aid Center at NLU, but that was totally different from academics, right? So we didn't really have any academic input on that, which is unlike there. You get credits even for clinical courses in US, for instance. So that is something different. So I mean, if you want to do LLM after work or a few years of work experience, you can model your LLM in such a way that it will be very, very practically suited to your needs. So that is one good thing. Second difference, if you talk about academics, is, as I said, Socratic method of teaching. You are expected to pre-read and Indian law schools are more of spoon feeding, but there you're expected to pre-read and come. And the classes are only discussions with professors. Right? So they're not going to, sit and tell you the basics they will clear your concepts, but you are supposed to study a lot on your own as well. And then, of course, there are different subjects, some are compulsory, of course, bar mandated subjects. Others you can just pick and as per your needs. So there are hundreds of courses you can pick from, so which is really helpful.
And you mentioned a very interesting point about how you should curate your L to your own specific interests and the fields that you're interested in. Is that something that you could maybe expand on? That's something that I've noticed that was quite an interesting point.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, for instance, some colleges offer specialized LLMs as well, right? Like, for instance, you can do a master's in international arbitration. So there, the courses will obviously only be related to that. But colleges which offer general LLM degrees, say Columbia offers a general LLM degree, you are free to decide whatever. You can do one corporate law subject, you can do one arbitration, you can do one real estate, like whatever you like, whatever your interests are. You can, so suppose I am working, I want to work in construction arbitration, for instance. So I can take a course on arbitration, then I can also take a course on real estate, because I have been a construction arbitration lawyer in India. So I can, choose those subjects when I go there. Second thing that helps is as I said, externships on the courses on experiential learning, like, negotiations workshop, or I did a course which was role of general counsel. So, right, if suppose you want to become an in-house lawyer. So that course is very, very helpful. I found that was a very interesting course. It was taught by the General Counsel of Louis Vuitton, actually, to us. So, they gave a lot of practical insights, like, how do they tackle IPR infringements, and they had these very interesting role-playing exercises, actually. So we used to do those. Some were group, some were like individual. So that kind of those things. And of course, if you do a course like that and you go and join, or you go and become an in-house counsel. So these, in India, you don't have like such tailor-made courses being offered to you for, whatever job you want to do. And then, of course, like there are, and as a part of that course, I did an externship with a fintech company. So twice a week, I used to go to the office in Brooklyn, and once a week we had a class on that, where we used to give feedbacks of what we learned. Everybody was doing externships with different companies, so we had to give feedbacks of what they did. So that was a very interesting experience. So these things you can, people who are, who have had work experience and who are doing LLM for, just enhancing their work skills, these courses are really helpful to them.
That's a very unique way of, I think, teaching students as well. It's like you're practically learning from the corporate culture, and then you're implementing and learning more about it when you come to college.
And I'm seeing a lot, like in US, a lot of professors are actually working professionals, right? So they are, like, for instance, arbitration professor would be actually an arbitrator in matters, or law firm partners will be teaching you M&A. So you definitely learn from their practical experience a lot.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, in college right now, I'm being taught that yes, we will learn about the theories and everything. The practical aspect you learn from, your internships and the extra things that you do. But here you're able to apply what you learned in an internship with your curriculum, and that's quite a unique and interesting way to learn, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, unlike so many candidates who pursue their foreign masters right after the undergrad degree, you had around 6 years of post qualification experience, your PQE. So, how did having this work experience impact your study abroad? And what do you think was a better choice, going right after your undergrad or going after you have gained some amount of work experience?
So actually, I would say that's a very, it's just it's a lawyer's typical answer. It depends.
Yeah.
So, it's for suppose if you're applying to the UK, so there the more common trend is to apply right after your college graduation. And because the LLMs in the UK are more academic oriented, right? So what my experience is in the US, where like say Columbia writes on their websites, like the minimum work experience we generally seek is 2 years. So in the US, law LLM degrees are more, they cater more to people who are already working. So most of my batchmates had an average work experience at least 3 years. So that's the find, like that's what you'll find. And there were others who came after 10 years. There were people who came after minimum, I think, was actually 1 year or something. So the way the course is structured in the US, it is meant for people who have some sort of work experience. In England, most of the batch, I think they're obviously, they also take people with work experience, but a lot of they're more open to taking people who are just fresh graduates. So I wouldn't say one, I wouldn't really necessarily pick one over the other. It's a very personal choice. A lot of factors govern it. For instance, money is also a very important factor that governs it. People who can afford direct LLM after college graduation probably want to do that. A lot of litigators do that. They think that, okay, just let's have a degree and then come back and fully immerse ourselves into the practice. So a lot of people prefer UK degree, for instance, in that way. But for someone for who maybe finance might be a consideration, they can choose after some work. Or the most common consideration for choosing American degree is when you want to get a job there. So American degree holds a stronger value internationally. So if you want to have a job in Europe or in Asia, anywhere, if you do an LLM in the US, it's easier for you to enter a workforce anywhere else. So obviously, it's not difficult. It's not impossible, or generally, what is it that wherever you're doing your LLM, that country, it is easier for you to get a job. But UK degree is also strong, and US degree, I would say, is perhaps stronger. You can get job anywhere globally if with that degree. So, but major consideration of where I see people from different countries who come to the US for an LLM, people who want to change their work trajectory, like for instance, or join a better firm. Like if I'm working in, say, as an M&A lawyer in India in a law firm, I have worked on parts of some transactions, like in India, unfortunately, which is not such a well-developed market. So what lawyers here generally end up doing is working on one particular part of a transaction. They want to, once you work in a global firm in, say, UK or US, then you get to be a part of the whole deal itself, which people obviously find more interesting. So for corporate lawyers, US is a very attractive market, I would say. So those people want to definitely go after some work experience because, they don't want to jump right after their graduation into those roles. So for them, I would say that, you can have a couple of years of work experience in a firm in India and then go for an LLM in the US.
Wonderful. Okay. And once you decided to pursue, and the next step would have obviously been shortlisting the universities and then the courses. What was your final college shortlist like? And then what key factors did you consider in making your decision and then end up in Columbia in the end?
So my factors were not very ideal actually, because my brother lived in New York, so I wanted to study in the US on the East Coast was my major consideration. I luckily got through Columbia, and that was 20 minutes away from my brother's house, so it was really convenient. Financially, also, it was so convenient for me. I could save on housing and everything. Emotionally as well, I had family there, so that was one. My personally, it was a major consideration, but I don't regret that because it did really help a lot for my contributing to my mental health, because I would say it's difficult to go and just settle abroad suddenly, and you struggle with a foreign country, then there's a lot of academic burden struggling with that. So all of those, I mean, it does make it really easy if you have somebody, friends, family abroad in that country, and I think it should be a consideration. But apart from that, obviously my consideration was the college ranking. I mean, I wanted a college which has a good name, and also like Columbia has a general LLM degree, but so I wanted to do some courses in dispute resolution, which Columbia has a good, the professors at Columbia, I researched, and they were obviously very good, so I mean that really inspired me to apply there. So I would say the brand value the college holds is important in terms of how what sort of alumni, strong alumni is obviously very good consideration that you should definitely consider. And what sort of courses, if you are doing some, if you want to do, if you're very sure you want to be in a particular field, then you can also apply to niche colleges, like say mids. If you know for sure that you want to do arbitration, mids is a good choice. But if you don't want to do arbitration, obviously it makes no sense. Then you can go to like a university which is offering multiple courses, and then cherry pick your courses and do what you like. So that those can be. So I would say look at the ranking and the brand value. Look at the alumni. It really helps if your alumni is widely spread. It's very good for networking, especially when you want to job later on. So those two considerations I would say should be the primary consideration. And third, of course, is if there are good professors teaching that course, look at the course modules. Are they designed according to your needs and what you like? If you should obviously find something that is of your interest. If you end up taking courses that you find really boring, then it's a very sad affair. So that look at the course, and it's advertised online in all the websites of all the universities, so you can have a good look at it.
Right. And I mean, Columbia University is not an easy feat. It's a brilliant college, it's well ranked. What was your application process like? Were there any specific challenges that you faced while applying to Columbia?
Yeah, I was doing there were multiple colleges that you apply to, so it wasn't as far as I mean, the process was a general application. I mean, it was just about the SOP and what you write. Like you have to write something that you want to write something that sort of stands out, but at the same time, so I did discuss with a lot of people, how to write a good statement of purpose, because that's extremely important. One thing that I have seen, I mean, there is no official rule on it, and nobody's going to say that out loud, but usually what the colleges look for are the fact they want to have a good diversity of cohort, right? So they want to take, they will take some people from all the fields, some from corporate, some from litigation, some from human rights, and they would make a good diverse cohort out of it, and which is obviously a very excellent thing to do, because you learn a lot from other people. So there's nothing wrong in it, but that is something they don't say. But what you have to realize is your competition in effect is within that particular niche. That's one thing. So sometimes what happens, I see people who have litigation sometimes get scared that, okay, we may not have the first top tier law firm experience, should we even apply? So that is not at all a consideration. You shouldn't worry. Does not depend what you have done or not. You should definitely apply, and the applications are considered on a ruling basis. So there is a lot of luck also, I would say. So don't get disheartened if you don't get through one particular college. You don't know what pool you are being considered with. So that is one. I see people from top firms, top colleges not getting through, and some, people from different backgrounds actually getting through. But the reason could be just literally anything. So they don't really have, because there is no set criteria. So I would advise not to get disheartened. That's also very important, because application results keep coming over a period of months. Third, like, very important thing I would say is a statement of purpose obviously should not be plagiarized, should not be written using AI and stuff like that. Some people, I have over the years seen a lot of SOPs people, ask me for advice on SOP writing. So what I usually tell them is it definitely has to be firstly really personal. I mean, and also all these colleges keep holding these seminars on how to write an SOP. You should definitely attend that. Columbia had an entire seminar on like what they look for in SOP. So that those are really helpful also when you're writing them. So one thing I would say is they definitely look. I mean, I can talk about the US SOP. UK, I mean, I'll come to the UK later. So US SOP, they definitely want you to be honest and they want you to be personal. That is, I mean, it's called statement of purpose, but it is extremely like personal purpose. Why you want to a particular. All universities want that you should mention definitely that their university is the one you would pick up. Nobody wants to take students who later will go and join other university, right? So you have to convince the university administration like that is the university which has been your dream college and you want to get there, and you will take up that college once you get in. How do you convince them is by telling them like the courses. Firstly, like a college has a good name or a brand, or reputation in the field that I want to work in. Second, you have to tell them like these are the particular courses I would like to do once I join. I'll see a lot of people not mentioning those things. That's a good way of writing. So at least they know that you have done your research. You don't just like pick out, okay, Columbia is in top 5, let me just apply there. That shouldn't be the case. Why that particular college, right? So this is the course I want to do. This is the professor who teaches. I really like their work. I want to learn under their tutelage, stuff like that. You have to definitely write those things. Another thing is when begin your statement of purpose with on a personal note. Say, you can talk about a lot of things. Why you chose to do law. Give a little of your family background to make it more personalized, right? Maybe you have seen something in your family that triggered you to do law, that inspired you to do law. What have been your motivations so far? Another thing is don't like as Indians, this is a good advice someone told me, that sometimes we shy away. We are taught humility as Indians a lot, like right from the beginning, that don't brag about yourself and things like that. But you should in an SOP, don't obviously don't say that I'm the best or I'm the smartest ever, but maybe like a humble bragging sort of thing, as we say. But don't shy away from putting all your you have to at the end of the day market yourself to them, right? So you should believe in yourself, and that should be clear from your SOP, that that you have done good things so far, and this is a track that you want. Why is that LLM important to you? And how you have to tell them the whole picture of what is your journey so far, like why is LLM an organic choice in nature. So that is something you really have to mention to them, and where in your life or in your career choice LLM plays a very important role. You have to show them that as well, like it's just not a degree you're doing at the side. Then what helps, of course, is your extracurriculars. That is important. So I would advise, I mean, people who are students right now and are in their law colleges, firstly, do not take your grades lightly. There is a very unfortunate, I would say, rather thing, belief in students like grades don't matter and stuff like that. It is true, obviously. I mean, I would say grades are ultimately not they do not decide the measure of your success in life. Of course, eventually they will not, but it is definitely a very big asset if you have them. So I would really encourage students to take their law colleges in India at least more seriously. If you excel in your class, it is definitely a big help. In the UK, especially, for instance, they ask you directly in your applications whether you are in the top 10 percentile of your batch or not. And if you say no, then your application weakens by very significant measure. So you have to be very, I mean, this is I'm talking about Oxbridge, for instance. So you if you are in the top 10 percentile, then that your application, you're definitely elevated to a certain pool and you will be considered more. And there is an international global competition, right? So it's definitely true. Once you join a workforce, say litigation or corporate, then your college grades will not matter. But while you have the chance, you should definitely try to use it to your advantage and focus on grades. Second thing is obviously your extracurricular activities. That is also very helpful. Like, try to be in positions of leadership. Try to show how you have shown responsibility. That will eventually help you write also in SOP. For instance, I could write incidents from the journal that I was heading at NLU Jodhpur. Like, we started a journal. So I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that might have helped my application, for instance, because journals are really appreciated. Anything that you're doing, which is apart from your studies, any sort of responsibility, even if you're a member of, in Columbia, we had murder mystery societies and beer clubs as well. Even if you're heading that, it is still considered a good thing because you're at least doing something which shows responsibility and which shows enterprise. So that is very important. So do something apart from your academics as well. Maybe you can excel at a sport. That's also very great. Anything that shows your character, anything which shows discipline, perseverance, responsibility, those will be very good. Third thing that really matter, I would say, are TA-ships. They were there in NLU when I was there. They are there in other colleges as well. Teaching assistantship, really, research assistantship with professors are, again, very helpful thing. Not a lot of students realize their importance, but if someone has LLM in mind later, I would say TA-ship is really good. TA-ship has a lot of respect abroad, and RA-ship as well, more than we have in India. So that also gives you a chance to ask for a letter of recommendation from the professor you're doing TA-ship with. For instance, I was a TA of Professor Messi twice, so I could, ask him for a reference letter. He was kind enough to give me one. So that also, once you have been a TA of a professor, it is definitely much stronger and more, credulous letter of recommendation than someone who has just randomly taught you and you have never worked with. So that's another important point I would want to come to. Letters of recommendation. Who do you take it from, right? If you are working, then obviously one of them has to be from your, somebody from your work, your boss or your partner, if you're in a firm. And from college, you have to take it from a professor who you have a personal connection with, who you have a rapport with, who you have worked with. So that is something you should really focus on, like getting to work with professors. Like I could work with professors in part of the legal aid committee or as part of the journal. So those then the letter of recommendations will also be richer. They will also have something to talk about. Otherwise, what happens is like if I see students coming with letter of recommendations, which are very generic, like just I taught this student, they are very bright, they did well in assessments. Because otherwise that's all you will end up writing because you don't know anything else about that. So try to have relationships with some professors at least who you can rely upon, who can write good letters of recommendation to you for you later. So for that, it is important that you be part of some center or some initiative, something that you do with those professors. And you can really think about that in law school itself. Who do you want to be in? Whoever you're comfortable with, you can choose. And you can apply for RA-ship to other professors working in different universities as well. So you don't have to be limited to your own university. You can, work on projects with the professors from abroad. You can work on projects with law firm partners. So RA-ship of any sort is really appreciated. So that shows your academic merit. So you basically you just have to make yourself sound like a meritorious candidate.
That's great advice. So you have to build a very holistic sort of a personality which is focused on academics, extracurriculars, research assistantships. That's amazing advice. It's something that people have to keep in.
Yeah, it's kind of more like jack of all trades, I think, helps. And then if you can become master of one field, that is another thing altogether. That is also great. If you can specialize in one thing, say suppose from law school itself, you decide you want to do arbitration. You write papers. That one very important point that I forgot is papers. So like for instance, Harvard application has an entire box on what publications you've had. So they really care about publications. So generally all colleges care about publications. So if you have had published papers in a field, that is really going to, strengthen your application. That is some place where I feel Indian students lack a little, but they are now obviously making up for it. So definitely try to have a publication in some field or the other while you are in law school. I know it's like tough, but that's really helpful. Other extracurriculars, you can be a mooter, you can be, a debater. I didn't do those things, but those things are also helpful, of course. But publications, I would say that, that's something I personally wish I had more. And that would have really strengthened my application for sure. So if you have the chance, definitely you should focus on publications. That is definitely a great place to begin with, in fact, I would say. And so suppose you don't want, if you have chosen one field and you become a master of it, that's also very great. Like, in law college itself, you've decided that field, and you garner all your internships, you sort of like, all your internships you channelize in that field, and you work in that field, and then you go for LLM in those subjects. That's a very perfect application as well. So it depends, but don't be like not doing anything at all. You need something at least to stand out for you.
Obviously. And ma'am, from your profile, you've done amazing extracurriculars even in NLU Jodhpur, founder editor-in-chief of the CalQ and the founder for Center of Comparative Constitutional Law and Administrative Law. That's amazing. I have a few of my friends were part of that center. And I was reading about the legal aid for the under trial prisoners, where you had done a collaboration with the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because I thought that was quite an interesting initiative.
So there was Professor Shastri, who unfortunately passed away. He was heading the center, our legal aid center at that point. And so he had this belief that you should not say no to anybody who wants to do legal aid work. So that year we had around, I think, 150 students working in the legal aid center.
Wow.
So that was quite a task managing all of them. And so I was the student chair, like the convener for it, and he was professor. And we had like 6-7 divisions, and one of the divisions was so that year we had a tie-up with Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. They were doing a project on under trial prisoners, study of those, their state of under trial prisoners. So we used to go to Jodhpur. We used to go to every Saturday. We would have a prison visit. So we would take a few students and go to the Jodhpur, and there we would interact with under trial. So they had given us a format, like, to ask them certain questions, like, why are you here? Are you aware of your rights? Were you able to contact your family? Can we help? Like, you require anything? And we also had some paralegals and other local lawyers that we would train also. NLU used to have those workshops, and we were in regular touch with them. So if needed, then we would have put them in touch also. But otherwise, that was more of a data collecting exercise. That was very insightful, because going to the prisons and seeing the stark reality of people. I think that was really inspiring for a lot of students also, who just became, human rights lawyers later. So a lot of them did, which was a good thing, I found. And so and all the first to fifth year, all the students would go, and maybe I think we used to go in a group of say 20 students, and that was a very good learning experience we had. And then we used to also work on newsletters, and which also talking about our experiences in the prisons. And while in legal aid, another thing we used to do was holding camps that I think that's probably still there. So we used to have village camps, and
the village, right?
It's through skits and all. We used to have, and there we used to take local lawyers as well, and if anyone needs anything. But it's a very humbling experience also, because once you're you're a law student, you think, okay, we are going to go there, and this is something I wrote in my SOP as well, because it's like we think that, okay, we are going to empower these people, these people who are villagers, poor things, don't know anything, we are going to go and tell them. So it's kind of you don't realize that superiority, thought that you might have before you go. when you go there, you realize that, okay, they are very well aware of their rights. They know the law. They know everything, probably better than you. It's just that, their circumstances are so unfortunate. The problems are at execution level. The problems are, so intricate that, you actually get very humble, thinking that you're going to just tell them about things and educate them, but in turn, they are the ones who you end up learning from. So you have to, this whole idea of serving without patronizing is something that I really learned from, my experience with the Legal Aid Center, I would say.
Compared to other jurisdictions, US universities have very high tuition fees. How did you manage your finances while studying abroad?
So US, I mean, that's true. US does definitely, it's more expensive than European colleges and even the UK college. Personally, I ended up saving money because my brother stays in New York and I was living with him. So I saved a lot on the housing. Housing is one big portion of expense. And, but I would talk, like, if I would talk from the perspective of like the, general average student, what you can do to save money in, and again, US also depends where you are. Like New York is specifically more expensive than, other universities or other cities are not as expensive. So it depends on where your college is also located. But one of the more expensive, expenses are your housing. So the universities provide all sort of housing. So you can choose to live in a shared accommodation. That is definitely going to bring your cost down. Universities subsidize a lot of accommodations as well. So you can apply for some subsidy and you can apply for one of those sort of accommodations, I would say. Another good opportunity is to do RA-ship, and if you get, then TA-ship also in these universities. So you earn money through that as well. So I, for instance, I can tell you that I earn around like $8,000 or something by my research assistantship itself, right?
Oh.
Because you assist professors, you do work, and then you're paid on an hourly basis. So, and people can earn much more if they have time to squeeze in their semester. So that is something you can definitely look at. Like how much, if you want to earn money on the side, you can use I mean, it is also definitely very good for your resume, and it is also a good, way to earn money on the side. So these things I would advise. Then of course, you can budget your food. I mean, there are a lot of events happening in big universities all the time where free food is given, less an incentive for students to come. You can go and attend those conferences and seminars. So that is also one way to save money. You can definitely have at least one meal in the university if you plan it right. Keep looking at the emails and who's doing what event. That's one way also that you can do. The societies would advertise, like for instance, I was a part of the Murder Mystery Society and we had free pizzas in every event. So that is a good way to also, see what you can cook. Another very important thing, like, go to grocery store, do your own cooking, so you're not ordering out. You can budget using those things. Otherwise, of course, the tuition fees, and that is something you obviously have to, and if you get a scholarship, that is great. There are a lot of scholarships that you can apply for, of course. Especially in the UK, there are more scholarships you can find. Tuition waiver a little difficult in the US unless you're a human rights scholar. Or there are other, like for instance, Columbia has a JGLS scholarship. There are so many of them you can, apply for. There are university-specific scholarships, and then there are general scholarships you can apply for.
All right. Makes sense. And while we go to our last few questions, how has your LLM journey impacted you personally beyond just academics and career?
I think it was a very good experience personally. In fact, I would say probably contributed more in my life personally than professionally, because one of the best things was international exposure that it gives. We had people from I think how many were 50, 60 different countries, and the cohort was extremely diverse. I made friends from all the countries. I have that was my first time having friends from different countries. Otherwise, I did not get that opportunity before, and so I had friends from Europe, I had friends from Asia, I had friends from Africa, everywhere. So that is Latin America. That is something you really get to know about their cultures. One very very interesting thing that I noted was how similar a lot of our cultures are. culture in Ethiopia is so similar. Like the food, the way they eat, the way they have culturally, we are very, very close, which is something I would not have known. And the way family relationships, the way you perceive friendships, very similar in, say, Argentina and India. That is something I would not have thought of either. So you learn a lot from these people, you learn a lot from their experiences. Professionally also, it is enriching because you get to know how they work, what are their work ethics, what sort of lives they have led so far, what kind of whatever you can learn from. I mean, there is learning from people is, I would say, the best form of learning. And when you do experiential courses with them, for instance, like as I mentioned before, I was doing a negotiations workshop. So there you interact with your classmates even more personally, right? So there, that course helped you a lot. Like I could see something like what is how your culture, how you have been raised, is affecting the way you conduct yourself as a lawyer, right? So that was a very therapeutic class that I took, for instance, because I'll give you a small example. Like the first time when we got the first exercise of negotiation, I got the best offer from my counterpart. So I was really happy. I thought the professor really gonna appreciate me. Like, okay, I got the best offer. The professor said that you did such a hard bargain that it is actually not, that's probably going to be impractical in real life, and your negotiation would have fallen apart. Right. Your counterpart is to solve. So I realized, and then the entire journey with that course was for me to learn not to do such hard bargaining and have more solution oriented and creative approaches to negotiation. That was what I could take from the course. Because, and I realized why probably that is so, because as a litigating lawyer in India, like especially as a female, I think that I have to probably raise my voice in courts to be heard, maybe over males sometimes. So I have this innate maybe fear or insecurity that I have to be really assertive, otherwise I would not be taken seriously. So that because of that, ingrained insecurity, that sort of got reflected in the way I was conducting myself as a lawyer. So when I did that negotiations workshop, so I realized that it does not always have to be so in all the situations. So I could modify my skills, I could modify my character accordingly. So that has helped me a lot in personal life as well. So I would say these things is something that LLM course could teach me. For someone else, like another classmate, she had to learn to be a more hard bargainer actually. So because she was otherwise softer. So it depends on what sort of your personality is, something that gets reflected in your work. And LLM course can help you attune your personality, which will eventually help your work, but also definitely help you personally as well. So these things, I would say, the exchange of ideas, the exchange of culture, and such personal experiences, especially, discussions with professors. And like New York is a microcosm of cultures, right? One of my best moments was in subways. I would take a 20-minute subway every day. I would observe what's happening, different people, different lives. That's very interesting as well. So personally, I think that really that international exposure really helps. So I would definitely advise people.
All right, so we have reached our last few questions of the podcast. Looking back, is there anything that you wish you had done differently during your LLM journey or during your undergrad journey that you would like to advise to our listeners?
So, like as I was telling you, one thing that I definitely wished I would have done more in my undergrad was focus more on publications. That is, I should have written more papers in the fields that I found interesting. That would have really helped the resume also more. And I think it's obviously a good thing to do, that makes you look like a serious candidate anywhere you apply, even for work, job, anywhere. So, and it is a good academic exercise to do as well. That is one thing, definitely. What I would have done differently, maybe I would have liked to be part of more cultural events than I was. So that is something I would have probably, I did, like, for instance, as I was part of the Taiwanese society where we would play mahjong.
Wow.
And that was a good experience, and you get to know about Taiwanese food, you get to know about Taiwanese culture. So I wish I did more of those with other countries and cultures as well. And I think that would have probably been a good idea. Right. So that's really, otherwise I try to do as much. LLM is a very guilt-ridden experience for a lot of people as well, because the minute they think, okay, we are paying so much of money, this is our opportunity. In 9 months, we have to squeeze in as much as you can. Initially, I tried to do that as well, but in middle of it, I realized that I also want to enjoy this experience and this time. So I mean, I wish I realized it a little sooner, but I'm glad I did, at least in the middle of it. But that's my advice to people. I think, you know, do whatever, like, you want to do. Or maybe focus on jobs and focus on your marks and everything. But also don't forget to enjoy. That is one thing I would really take more of experiential learning courses, take more of seminars as well.
Right, right. Makes sense. And you're presently teaching at JGLS and also practicing law. Could you expand more on that or what your future plans are with regards to them?
So yeah, I teach investment arbitration there, and I do my legal counseling. I mean, I like to do a different variety of work, so I don't want to be like, academia is something that has always interested me. It's a good way of giving back also to the society, I feel. And a lot of my professors in LLM were working professionals, and they get practical insights into academia, which I think is very, very important and very enriching. So I also wanted to be, someone who could be a bridge between practice and academia. So like, when I teach courses like DPC, I think it's one of the most important courses in law school, which is unfortunately often overlooked. But now that I have this litigation experience, I can, kind of help students more. I feel like, I can be a bridge between them and the practical insights that I have, and I can use my experience to, like, tell them what actually happens, what is the theoretical part, and maybe prepare them better for a legal career ahead. So that is something which is what I try to do.
Right. And well, that brings us to the end of this episode. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you from Project LLM to you for being so encouraging, so patient, and so comforting, honestly, for me as well as I'm sure to all of our listeners. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was great being here.
Of course. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you found today's discussion as enlightening as I did. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and leave us a comment. Thank you so much. Until next time.